Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Arthritis at Home. Today, I'm joined by ACE's Programs Coordinator, Wang. Ellen and I are going to look at the results of Arthritis Consumer Experts National Survey on exercise and physical activity and arthritis. And Ellen is a great person for us to be speaking to about these results, since she is an exercise physiologist who's currently doing her PhD at UBC. Ellen, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. Excited to be on here again.
So I don't have to tell you, but certainly for our audience, a reminder that we really wanted to focus in on this subject area just because it is so important for all arthritis patients, whether they're living with osteoarthritis or an inflammatory arthritis. Physical activity, exercise is just a critical piece of healthcare. And certainly patients are, we hope, urged and recommended to be looking to get more physically active, to adopt exercise, and to have less sedentary activity as a means of trying to manage with their type of arthritis. And Ellen, you're going to talk to us about the survey, but obviously it's a challenging topic for patients because it requires in many cases, some serious behavior change, and whether that is diet or more activity or less sedentary time, less computer time, screen time, less time in front of a television, it can be challenging for patients.
That's exactly correct, Kelly. That's why it is so important. And we all know it's so important, whether you live with arthritis or not, whether you live with a different chronic condition. But I think it makes it extra difficult, like you said, because it requires behavior change and really lifestyle modifications. And individuals who live with arthritis experience, can we say a few extra barriers that we have to problem solve and navigate. But as you pointed out, incredibly important. And that's why we wanted to do this survey, because we wanted to hear from individuals living with arthritis exactly what are those barriers that they experience, and what do they want to see more of? What's going to help them?
I mean, the concept of physical activity as medicine was really underlined again for all of us at the Canadian Rheumatology Association's most recent annual meeting. One of the annual features of this meeting is something that they hold called the Great Debate, where they have two teams of rheumatologists, two on either side, debating or arguing about a point of research or clinical guidelines. And this year they are looking at the role of the rheumatology healthcare provider. What is their role in prescribing and monitoring physical activity in arthritis patients? And I think for us at ACE, we all attended that great debate, and it really sparked for us some ideas for programming for this year. And it led to the development of this most recent national survey that we're reporting on today. So to begin, Ellen, what, besides the inspiration for the survey, what were sort of the general objectives that we had?
Absolutely. I believe, after we sat in on the great debate, the wheels were turning on our head, because we realized that individuals living with arthritis, even though we engage in different activities, we have different lifestyles, we're different people, we have common concerns about physical activity that are unique to, arthritis, I would say. For example, what types of activities should I engage in? What types of activities should I avoid? How much is, enough, but how much is way too much and might aggravate the pain, increase fatigue? And what do I do if I do experience pain, fatigue, other symptoms? We also know that Unfortunately, individuals that who live in rural areas and those who identify as BIPOC may have different or unique barriers in kind of even within individuals living with arthritis. That umbrella, they have unique barriers, and we wanted to tease those out too, so that we can better inform, what is produced in future in terms of our content, and hopefully some researchers or clinicians, if they're listening in right now, can also use this information.
In terms of the survey questions, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about how we group them, because what we're trying to capture in terms of the physical activity exercise experience with arthritis patients was to try and capture what that looked like before an arthritis diagnosis and what it looked like after a diagnosis. Can you just walk us through what some of those areas of questioning were?
Bingo. There were 3 kind of subsections of the survey. The first being, as you already mentioned, what was your activity, your physical activity, or your exercise, really, that was what we're trying to capture, like prior to diagnosis. The second part was, did you experience any changes after diagnosis? Do you experience any barriers, any facilitators? And then the third section is, what guidance, what resources, what programs do you want to see? Who do you want there to support you on your journey of exercise? So those are kind of the 3 main sections.
Before we get into the findings, just to make sure that our audience is clear, is exercise and physical activity, are they interchangeable or synonymous, or is there distinctions between the two?
Fantastic question. And, I want to say that they're completely unique and distinct, and we all are super crystal clear on the difference. But they are used synonymously even in the literature, definitely in day-to-day. But to clarify, physical activity is an umbrella term. It's any movement. So you brushing your teeth, the steps that you take from your door to your car, that is all physical activity. It's any bodily movement, so anything. On the other hand, exercise is, I like to think of it as goal-oriented. You exercise to reach a goal, whether that's being able to hike up a mountain, feeling really good about yourself, lifting a certain amount of weight. And in order to get there, it has to be structured, right? You have to do it in a way that helps you meet your goal. It's repetitive, so you do it again and again and again to help you meet your goal. And it usually is quite planned. You decide on which days you want to do that activity or to practice that activity to meet a goal. So that's how I think of it. One is an umbrella term, and the other one is a specific part of physical activity. So exercise is a specific part of physical activity that is goal-oriented, structured, it's planned, and it's most definitely repetitive.
I think what we like to do today is maybe you can just share some of those highlights of the survey findings for the audience.
Absolutely, Kelly. I'd be happy to do that. And, if anyone who completed the survey is listening in right now, thank you so much for your response. I know this one was a little bit of a long one. There are about 30 questions, and it took about 15 minutes to complete. We had a whopping 280 responses. 270 of those were in English and 18 of those were in French. The individuals who responded, many of them reported living with rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, and ankylosing spondylitis. So those were the top 3. This may come as a surprise to some. 9 out of 10 respondents identified as women. 1 in 10 respondents identified as Black, Indigenous, or person of color. And prior to diagnosis, so again, now we're getting into that first section of the survey, the top 3 types of exercise were recreational activities, exercise programs. This can be, Pilates, yoga, swimming lesson, etc. In the individual's exercises, whether that's skiing or going to the gym. And then 1 in 10 respondents said their healthcare provider discussed exercise with them after they asked about exercise during their kind of after diagnosis. So that was, I think, the really surprising thing for me. It's only about 1 in 10 that will have this conversation. And even more surprising was that respondents that lived in a rural area were actually less likely to say that their healthcare provider had a discussion about exercise with them. So even less likely than 1 in 10. So definitely room for improvement. And I wrote down a quote that was, I think, really, really powerful to me. One individual living with rheumatoid arthritis said, the discussion about exercise came 15 years after diagnosis. So we can do a lot better as healthcare providers. Absolutely. And then the kind of second section was how, exercise changed. And nearly 9 out of 10 respondents said, yes, their exercise routine had changed. So we can confirm this. Exercise routines had changed.
This is after diagnosis?
This is after diagnosis.
Okay.
And, when we think about this a little bit more, and we were able to break it down and look at it, some individuals had actually increased exercise because they were prompted by healthcare providers to do so. So, there are a subsection of individuals who have experienced and who've had that discussion. And guess what? It works. When healthcare providers have that conversation, it gets people to exercise. One of the, I would say, not so bright notes is that individuals after diagnosis, the biggest change was actually in exercise intensity or the level of challenge. So we had about 33%, which is a third. So 1 in 3 individuals said they started exercising at a less challenging level than previously. And the reason why, again, I have a really powerful quote here, says, I was concerned about my health would decline more rapidly if I didn't start exercising more intentionally. So I started exercising. So this just says that individuals who now use exercise as a part of their self-care, as to manage their arthritis, it does help. And that, if there is that conversation early on after diagnosis, it does make a really big difference, given this quote right here.
What you're telling us about the survey findings is that although it is an individual's responsibility for it to work, for us to get people active, for us to people to get into exercise routines or programs, it really requires sort of a consistent messaging from all members of their healthcare team, not just one, not just their pharmacist, not just their rheumatologist, not just their GP, but everyone that they're talking to. This needs to be one of the messages. And what you're describing is that that's currently not the case.
Yes, we do see that discrepancy in the data. But we also hear the quotes from the people who have gotten that message to say, yeah, they did start exercising more because they were told to. Absolutely.
And I think another key takeaway that you and I have talked about, Ellen, is that the survey respondents also, in many cases, expressed their desire of wanting to join exercise programs in their community, to work with an exercise coach, and to be able to have, and I know I'm in this case too, is that it's one thing to see the physio, to see the sport chiropractor. They give you the exercise program, you go home and it's like, I can't remember how to do this. And so to have that kind of support and follow up, whether it's a video or in print, to make sure that they're doing the exercise properly, because I think we found certainly overall, a lot of patients saying they were worried that they weren't doing them properly, unsupervised. But I think that also there were certain populations that really, that this was a really profound barrier for them.
That's exactly. this third part of third subsection of the survey really highlighted that, yeah, individuals want community programs, right? But not just community programs. For individuals who identify as BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, they want culturally sensitive, appropriate programs that are welcoming. They're twice as likely to want to have an exercise coach, which is quite surprising. For me, I read that, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. They want that extra support. Individuals also wanted detailed videos and instructions on how to do the exercise. And for me, my little hat and a little light goes off, and I'm like, perfect place for, if you are a community organization, if you are, part of the advocacy world, that's a place to start, is to create videos with detailed instructions. That's a gap that someone hearing this can definitely fill. But yes, like you said, there are differences with kind of different groups, whether you live kind of in a rural community, whether you identify as being BIPOC as well.
I think our survey has helped identify some known gaps, maybe some less known gaps. Also areas where patients need more support. What is ACE going to do with this information to maybe address some of those issues?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is recognize that while it's like great survey, amazing data, that's not fully representative, and that ACE will do more in the future to actually capture more data. And now that we understand there are differences, I think it's really important to action on those differences, even for those groups. So for example, as we mentioned before, culturally sensitive communication, culturally sensitive programs, resources, but that also translates to the work that ACE does. Are we sure that the information, what we post on social media, what we have on our website is culturally appropriate? Is there a section to actually encourage exercise of different forms? Probably not what we traditionally think of as exercise. So to say that it can still be planned, structured, and repetitive, but it's outside of what we know. For example, traditional dancing, right? For different cultures, that is a form of exercise. So being able to add that in and be aware of that in our own messaging, I think, is one big one. The other one was really highlighted in the survey, and I don't want to give too much away, but a lot of the rural respondents, what they pointed out was the access issue, which we know of. And I can't say this one comes as a surprise, but how do we, as an advocacy organization, advocate for better access for individuals who live in smaller towns, smaller communities? For them, do we, advocate in terms of getting someone in the government to really listen to this message from individuals living with arthritis? Again, lots of wonderful information to action on. And I think we have few really good ideas or really good places to start.
We mentioned that there's going to be a special edition of Joint Health Insight that's going to look in detail at the survey and the survey results. Where else can our viewers and listeners get information?
Great question. In the Joint Health Insight, kind of at the bottom, we've linked a few resources that we think are really great. So for example, if you are at home and you want to do a little exercise that is friendly for your joints, there are exercise snacks with Dr. Jasmine Maha, who is an associate professor at the University of British Columbia, that does kind of these 15-minute exercise snacks. And that's also on our website, Arthritis at Home. There's also kind of the GLAD program, which it came out of Denmark, I believe. And this is, a program that's been implemented worldwide, and it's proven to be quite accessible. It's proven to be effective for the joints. So there are exercise videos on their website, and obviously the 24-hour movement guidelines put out by the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology. If you want to learn more about what types of exercise you should be doing, again, those are just a handful, but I think really great place if you are looking for more information to get you started.
Great. Thank you, Ellen, and thank you for reviewing the survey with us. I think a lot of interesting aspects of that exercise, physical activity experience. A lot of, I think our audience are going to identify at some point during that, where they are in that experience. And we want to thank you all for joining us today. When this video is over, we encourage you to stand up, do a little stretching, go get a glass of water, take that dog for a walk, get active. And we really look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. And Ellen, thank you again for spending some time with us today at Arthritis at Home.
Absolutely. What a pleasure, Kelly. And thank you again to everyone. Enjoy being physically active.